On September 20th, 2024, at a small convenience store on the outskirts of Springfield, an unusual and rather humorous incident took place. A woman, with an attitude as though the entire world owed her something, caused an uproar by accusing the store of stealing $20 from her. Instead of resolving the matter calmly, she chose to turn the place into a stage for her angry demand for money. The store employees and customers, who initially just wanted to go about their shopping, quickly found themselves caught up in the chaos, with dramatic moments ranging from threats to the arrival of the police. A witness, who had coincidentally been at the scene and was trying to catch the next bus, inadvertently became a key figure in clarifying the situation. The story shared by this individual not only changed the course of the event, but also opened up an interesting twist. According to the witness, the truth was completely different from what the woman had claimed. She hadn't been robbed of $20 by the store, as she had stated, but in fact, the money had disappeared into the hands of a man who was with her. What's noteworthy is that this man wasn't some stranger, but someone she trusted and was helping. Ironically, instead of her good deed being met with gratitude, it became the price to pay for deceit and betrayal. This man, who she thought was a reliable partner, had seized the opportunity to take her money. Just a little lapse in vigilance and a bit too much overzealous kindness led her into a trap she never saw coming. This event was not just a shock to her trust, but also a reminder about being cautious in relationships that might seem harmless at first. Instead of thanking the witness for providing valuable information that helped clarify the matter, the woman turned the situation into an absurd and bizarre farce. Rather than staying calm and finding a reasonable solution, she quickly shifted from being angry to being fiercely determined, as if her sole goal at that moment was to get what she wanted at any cost. It felt as though her rage had completely taken over her actions, making everything she did appear ridiculous and uncontrollable. In an instant, she rushed behind the cashier's counter, an act that seemed like something out of a low-budget action movie, where the protagonist is determined to attack without thinking of the consequences. She walked with purpose, her steps strong, as if ready to face any challenge ahead. Every gesture, from her threatening tone to the look on her face as if confronting an enemy, showed how tense and determined she was. Her frantic scrambling behind the counter not only frightened the store employees but also left all the witnesses dumbfounded, unable to believe what they were seeing. This scene didn't just cause confusion, it made everyone think about the level of madness her outburst was displaying, like a nonsensical play unfolding in real life. The witness, who had only wanted to wrap up the story quickly to catch the bus, unexpectedly became a loyal observer to a performance they never anticipated. Initially, this witness had simply wanted to provide information in hopes of resolving the matter quickly and smoothly. But no one could have imagined that just a minute later, they would be sucked into an unavoidable mess. With the sole intention of finishing the task and leaving, the witness could not have predicted that they would become an essential part of this chaotic story. As the incident escalated, the situation in the store continued to spiral out of control. The woman not only failed to find empathy or a solution but also began to shift from a victim into the troublemaker, becoming the catalyst for the subsequent tense events. Her complete lack of control over herself seemed to magnify the overall atmosphere, making everyone feel the unease and anxiety around them. The witness, once an outsider, now had to endure not just the chaos but also the helplessness of seeing everything slipping out of their control. The woman, with an unshakable confidence like that of a self-appointed lawyer, firmly claimed that the cashier had stolen her $20, as though she were in the middle of a high-stakes trial and she was the sole victim. However, instead of calmly presenting the situation in a logical manner, she decided to turn the store into an emotional battleground with heated arguments. Every word she spoke was delivered at such a volume that it seemed as though she was addressing a crowd waiting for salvation. She shouted, screamed, and criticized every move of the staff, as if they were the culprits in a serious and tense case, where every detail was of utmost importance. Her attitude was not only an irrational outburst but also an exaggerated spectacle that no one could have anticipated. Her accusations spread like a storm, overwhelming the store and turning the once peaceful atmosphere into one of tension and discomfort. She relentlessly yelled, forcing the employees to answer each of her illogical questions. The staff, who simply wanted to do their job quietly, found themselves facing a situation they could never have predicted. They described her behavior as a strange mix of aggression and noise, with her loss of control becoming the only focal point. Meanwhile, she even tried to climb over the counter, creating a scene that could not help but make others laugh at the failure of her break-in attempt. What began as a simple misunderstanding turned into an absurd and endless conflict, all due to a complete lack of control and reason. The scene took an even more absurd turn as the woman, in an apparent attempt to demand justice, tried to scale the counter with all the grace of a toddler attempting their first solo climb. Her movements, which seemed more suited for a high-stakes action movie, quickly descended into a slapstick routine. Instead of looking like a determined crusader for fairness, she found herself teetering dangerously toward a towering display of potato chips. In what could only be described as a tragicomic dance of flailing limbs, she narrowly avoided sending bags of chips flying in all directions. Had this spectacle unfolded in a different setting, one might have assumed it was a botched audition for a parkour training video. The chips, suspended in midair for a moment, swayed precariously as if the entire display had been thrown off balance by her clumsy antics. Meanwhile, the store employees, clearly exasperated but maintaining a professional demeanor, could only watch in disbelief. Their collective sighs were drowned out by the chaos as they instinctively stepped back, giving her a wide berth in case the situation escalated further. With each step she took, it seemed as though the woman was one move away from creating a bigger mess, physically and figuratively, while they anxiously awaited the arrival of the police. The staff's silent prayers for the intervention of law enforcement were their only solace in that moment, hoping someone with more authority could step in and restore order to what had quickly become a farcical scene. When the woman continued to insist that she had been robbed, her actions not only shocked those around her but also left them feeling exhausted from the tension she created. A suffocating atmosphere spread throughout the store as every word she spoke seemed like an unfounded accusation, yet filled with aggression. The store employees, unable to endure it any longer, hastily pressed the emergency alarm, not just because of her threatening shouting but also due to her frantic and uncontrollable behavior. She didn't stop at interrogating the staff but also rummaged through the checkout area, as if searching for invisible evidence of a $20 conspiracy that only she could perceive. She seemed convinced that everything happening in the store was part of a devious game where everyone was guilty, except for her. Her behavior not only caused immediate chaos but also made everyone feel as though they were caught in a ridiculous drama where logic and reason were completely ignored. With every outburst, her angry, baseless words made the atmosphere even more stifling, forcing the already overworked employees to face a heavy mental challenge. Meanwhile, the other customers could do nothing but stand and watch, unsure whether to get involved in the absurd argument or quietly withdraw from the overly dramatic situation. The situation took an unexpected turn when the officers, aiming to get to the bottom of the chaotic scene, decided to review the store's CCTV footage. What unfolded on the screen was nothing short of cinematic, like a plot twist straight out of a dark comedy. Rather than validating the woman's wild accusation of being robbed, the footage shattered her claims in the most embarrassing way possible. Instead of showing a victim in distress, it depicted her as the architect of the disturbance, aggressively confronting the cashier, making wild gestures, and escalating the situation to a point where it became almost absurd. The video footage revealed that her entire story was more laughable than an empty basket, something that seemed to promise potential, yet ultimately held nothing of substance. It was a stark contrast to the dramatic narrative she'd painted, unraveling her credibility with every second of playback. In the video, the woman quickly transforms from a supposed victim to the unmistakable instigator of the chaos unfolding in the store. Far from being the helpless party in a theft, she becomes the driving force behind a spectacle that seems more like a theatrical production than a simple dispute. With exaggerated, almost comical gestures, she commands the space like an actress on an impromptu stage, turning the store into her personal performance venue. Her every move is over the top, as she points at the employees with dramatic flair, accusing them of the most ridiculous, unfounded charges. Each finger pointed seemed to carry with it not just anger but an almost theatrical sense of injustice, as though she were playing a role in a courtroom drama rather than simply trying to resolve a misunderstanding. But the absurdity doesn't stop at her verbal outbursts. In a move that could have been lifted straight from an action film, or perhaps a slapstick comedy, she attempts to scale the counter, a risky and unnecessary action that both startled onlookers and put herself in physical danger. It's as if, in her mind, the very counter, which serves as a boundary between customer and employee, was a symbol of something she could conquer to assert her dominance in the situation. This reckless decision, fueled by her delusion of victimhood, only added to the farcical nature of her performance, making the scene both dangerous and absurd at the same time. The CCTV footage provided a clear and revealing glimpse into the incident, highlighting the woman's interactions with the man she had been with. This man, the one who had taken the extra change and walked away without a second thought, was the true source of her financial woes. Yet, rather than acknowledging that the problem stemmed from her companion's actions, the woman chose to shift her focus entirely onto the store employees. These employees, who had nothing to do with the confusion, were simply trying to navigate the chaos of a busy workday, doing their best to keep things running smoothly amidst a mounting series of disruptions. Rather than resolving the issue by confronting the individual who had taken the money, the woman, fueled by frustration and perhaps a sense of entitlement, redirected her fury toward those who were only trying to ensure order in the store. This misdirected aggression not only made the situation worse but also painted her as someone unwilling to take responsibility for her own mistakes. Her failure to see the situation for what it was, an unfortunate misunderstanding involving her companion, fueled her irrational behavior, making the employee's attempts to maintain control appear even more heroic in contrast to her erratic outbursts. More crucially, the CCTV footage not only dismantled her entire fabricated story, but it also revealed the true extent of her disruptive behavior. Rather than supporting her claims of being robbed, the video presented a stark contrast, exposing how she aggressively escalated the situation. The footage captured her engaging in hostile gestures, from threatening body language to overtly aggressive movements that suggested an underlying intent to intimidate and control the situation. This was no mere misunderstanding or an accidental outburst. It was a calculated attempt to provoke a reaction, and it was evident to everyone, especially the officers, that the staff's decision to activate the alarm button and call the police was a direct result of her escalating threats. As the footage continued, the narrative that had been spun by the woman crumbled further. She had, in fact, become the antagonist of the entire scenario, not the victim as she had hoped to portray. The officers, upon reviewing the footage, could clearly see that she was not a helpless individual, but rather an unwilling protagonist, an active participant in a drama that she had created. She positioned herself at the center of the chaos, casting herself as a wronged party when, in reality, she was merely trying to incite disorder. Her attempts to frame herself as a victim in the eyes of the public and law enforcement were ultimately hollow, as the video exposed the absurdity of her claims. What was most striking was how the footage revealed a situation so rife with needless drama, yet completely lacking any real substance or logical foundation. Her narrative was built entirely on emotion, threats, and confrontation, with no basis in fact. Instead of the victimized individual she imagined herself to be, the woman was clearly the source of the disturbance, transforming a minor misunderstanding into a spectacle of aggression. The officers, who were trained to sift through chaos for clarity, were now tasked with navigating her self-created drama, which was as theatrical as it was illogical. What the CCTV effectively did was strip away the layers of fabricated emotion, leaving only the raw truth. She was the catalyst for the disorder, and her attempt to spin a different story fell apart as soon as the evidence was examined. The officers, with admirable patience and professionalism, informed her that she was being banned from the store. This action was necessary to protect both the employees and customers, ensuring the situation didn't spiral out of control. However, instead of accepting the warning and leaving quietly, she continued to escalate the tension. She started shouting demands for her $20 back, but her way of presenting the issue was more akin to a tense hostage negotiation scene in a Hollywood action movie. Her screams were not only illogical but also filled with such melodrama that even the store employees, who had dealt with all kinds of difficult customers, were left speechless. She not only kept repeating the story about the lost money but also dismissed every explanation from the police. The officers patiently tried to explain that the issue had nothing to do with the store, but with the man who had taken the extra money. Yet, despite the rationality in their words, she continued to loudly refute every reality, as though living in her own alternate version of events. Moreover, her body language was filled with defiance, arms crossed, pointing fingers, heavy footsteps as if to emphasize that she would not back down. Every word she uttered seemed to escalate the tension, forcing both the officers and the store employees to maintain their composure while also trying not to laugh at the sheer absurdity of the situation. Her behavior was no longer simply a complaint about service or a demand for money. It had crossed the line into a farcical performance, capturing everyone's attention in the store. While the officers persisted in offering peaceful solutions, she made it clear she wasn't interested in any resolution, only in controlling the situation in her own chaotic way. Ultimately, despite the officers' best efforts to keep things under control, it was clear that a peaceful approach was futile with this woman. Banning her from the store was the bare minimum necessary to restore order and ensure that no one else would be affected by the emotional storm she had brought with her. When the officers decided that there was no choice but to arrest her, things quickly escalated in a way no one expected. Her reaction was akin to a child being denied candy in a supermarket, but instead of tears, she unleashed a colorful vocabulary that would have embarrassed even the most seasoned bar patrons. Her actions were so theatrical that one might wonder if she was secretly auditioning for a role in a legal drama. She writhed, struggled, and shouted nonsensical accusations as if her arrest were part of a grand global conspiracy aimed specifically at harming her. The officers, with the patience of those who have dealt with countless unpleasant situations, tried to convince her to cooperate. But all efforts were in vain. As she continued to scream and resist, they were forced to use stronger measures, handcuffing her while trying to keep everyone safe. What stood out was the volume and content of her screams, which could be heard even by those a block away. From "Why are you doing this to me?" to "You'll regret this." Every word was delivered with such drama that even Shakespeare would have been jealous. By the time she was subdued, the air around the scene seemed to lighten. Witnesses even whispered a few jokes, trying to ease the tension of the situation. But for the officers, this was just another day on the job, and perhaps an unforgettable story to tell during their break. On the way to the station, the woman continued to perform her symphony of complaints, wails, and bizarre accusations. She alternated between pleading for help from God and accusing the officers of being involved in a massive conspiracy against her. Her words fluctuated from emotionally charged pleas fit for a tragedy to outlandish accusations more suited to a science fiction movie. Throughout the journey, the officers' attempts to maintain composure were constantly tested. They could only exchange helpless looks, trying to ignore her erratic behavior. She continued to yell for justice, repeating that she had been deceived and robbed, while in reality, she was the only one disrupting the peace. When they arrived at the station, the situation didn't improve. Even when asked to sit down to complete the paperwork, she kept putting on a new dramatic scene. From shouting that she was the victim of a dark force to refusing to cooperate because she didn't trust the legal system, she made everything more complicated than necessary. In the end, she was forced to comply and finish the intake process at the station. However, her theatrical performance was far from over, leaving a lasting impression on the officers and staff there. To the witnesses, this was not just a regular arrest but a humorous spectacle full of drama and exhaustion. With charges including assault, resisting arrest, and trespassing, the woman had crowned herself with a new title, Queen of Misguided Rage. These 3 charges not only reflected her actions throughout the incident but also proved that sometimes, losing control doesn't just cause a loss of respect but can also land you in situations beyond repair. While the officers completed the paperwork, the cashier breathed a sigh of relief, hoping never to face such a situation again during their next shift. The frustration and discomfort felt by the employees during the argument were understandable as they just wanted to get their work done without being interrupted by an illogical performance. As for the woman, while she may have lost her $20, she undeniably won a contest no one would want to participate in, becoming the center of a bizarre and embarrassing story. Instead of resolving the issue in a smart and peaceful manner, She had turned herself into the star of a drama no one asked for. And with her attitude, she left a lasting impression on those who witnessed the event. Her story will be the topic of many conversations, making people shake their heads in disbelief and smile at the unbelievable absurdity. Her story will not just be a fleeting memory but will continue to be a topic of conversation long after, leaving everyone wondering, did she really think she was doing the right thing? Ultimately, this story is not just a humorous situation involving an over-the-top woman, but also a lesson on how to handle difficult situations in life. While she may have lost $20 and an opportunity to resolve the issue wisely, her creation of chaos and refusal to cooperate caused her to miss the only chance to clarify the matter. The store employees, though stressed during the situation, ultimately completed their work and learned that sometimes patience and composure can help solve complicated problems without the need for senseless arguments. This story reminds us of the importance of staying calm and solving issues logically, rather than letting emotions overshadow reason. Engaging in pointless arguments only makes everything more complicated, and sometimes, letting things pass naturally can lead to better outcomes. We can't control every situation, but we can control how we react.